All right, let's talk about this. That pressure, you know, to be totally, completely original.
Oh, yeah. Like everything you make has to be something absolutely brand new, never seen before.
Exactly. But we got some really interesting source material here today that kind of pushes back on that idea.
It does. It looks at originality, sure, but also authenticity and maybe what it really means to like leave your mark creatively.
Yeah, there's this tension, right, between the myth that originality means inventing something from, well, nothing.
Right, out of thin air, versus the view these sources put forward, which is more about expressing who you are through your work.
Mm. So that's our mission for this deep dive, really, to unpack these ideas from the sources we've got.
Understand what originality and authenticity actually look like, in practice, how they connect.
And importantly, why this perspective matters to you listening right now, whether you're already deep into creating or just thinking about maybe starting something.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so where do we start? Maybe with that big hurdle.
Yeah, let's just name it. The sources really confront that feeling head on. That whole it's all been done before thing.
Right. And they don't dismiss it. They acknowledge, yeah, okay, song structures, story arcs, visual styles.
Forms, yeah. They have precedence. Stuff existed before what you're doing now, that's just a fact.
So if that's true, why bother?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? And this is where the sources offer a really powerful pivot.
Definitely. They argue originality isn't about making something from scratch. It's more like revealing something true through your lens.
Through your lens, I like that.
And they emphasize that this is just how creativity works fundamentally. Art is iterative, language evolves, culture is a remix.
It's always building on what came before, adapting, responding. That feels, I don't know, kind of liberating, doesn't it?
Totally, because if you don't have to invent the wheel every single time.
So what do you have to do? There's a great quote in here. You don't need to be the first, you need to be real.
Yes, that's the core of it. Making peace with the idea that your work might use a structure someone else has used, that frees you up.
Frees you up how, though?
Well, because what makes it yours, what gives it meaning, isn't some totally novel structure nobody's ever conceived of. It's the intention behind it.
Okay.
The specific choices you make within that structure, your voice, the values you weave in, that's the unique part.
The sources put it really well. They say, no one else has lived your life. No one else sees the world exactly the way you do.
Right. That alone makes your voice worth hearing.
So even if you're using, say, a familiar song structure, your experiences, your history, that's like this unique palette of colors only you have.
Exactly. You don't need to invent a new language from scratch. You just need to speak your truth using the language you have filtered through you.
Okay, so that leads nicely into the next big theme, right? This idea of prioritizing authenticity.
Yeah, authenticity over maybe chasing trends or just trying to be innovative for innovation's sake. They talk about having an internal guide.
Yeah.
Soft compass.
A soft compass. I like that term. It's not pointing towards like likes or shares or external validation.
No, it's quieter, more intuitive. It asks a different question. Not, will this be popular, but...
Does this feel like me?
Precisely. And that completely shifts how you measure your own success, doesn't it?
Yeah, the sources suggest looking beyond just the hard data, the numbers. They talk about valuing soft data.
Soft data. What does that mean in practice?
Things like asking yourself, did I actually enjoy making this? Did I say something I believe in? Does this piece reflect where I am right now? Or maybe where I've been?
And that feeling of authenticity, it's not static, is it? What feels like you today might be different next year.
Oh, for sure. The sources are really clear on this. Cringing at your old work is a sign of growth.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that feeling.
Right. But it doesn't mean the old work was bad or invalid. It just means you've, moved forward. You've evolved.
Which is actually a really forgiving way to look at your creative journey. It's not this perfect straight line.
No, they call it a trail of becoming. I love that phrase. Every piece you make, that comb, that drawing, that project, it's like a little marker on the trail, proof that you showed up. You expressed something in that moment.
And speaking of showing up and building on things, let's talk about copying, because that can feel kind of taboo.
Yeah, definitely. But the sources actually tackle it directly. They suggest that sometimes copying is a really, really valuable part of learning.
Right, like think about musicians playing covers, or writers typing out passages by authors they admire just to feel the rhythm of the sentences.
Or artists copying masterworks to understand technique. The sources call this kind of copying training, not theft, but training.
Yeah, there's a great analogy in there too, like following a recipe when you're just learning to cook.
Right. And the quote is perfect. Imitation is practice, identity comes later.
But there is a line, isn't there? The sources are careful to point that out.
Absolutely. The line gets crossed when it becomes exploitation, like taking someone else's work, maybe tweaking it slightly, and then selling it or passing it off as entirely your own.
Especially if you're directly competing with the person you copied from. That's where it gets problematic.
They use that cookbook analogy again. Following a recipe at home to learn? Fine. That's practice.
But building your whole restaurant business using someone else's unique cookbook without giving any credit or compensation, that's different. That's exploitation.
Context and intent really matter here.
So the advice seems to be, if you're starting out, don't be afraid to imitate things you admire. Use it to figure out how things work. Reverse engineer it.
Yeah, but be honest about it, at least with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And see it as a stepping stone, right? A path towards finding your own way of doing things, not the end goal itself.
And there's that other layer, too. The sources hint that maybe all art is kind of a remix anyway. We're all influenced by what came before.
Right. So authenticity isn't about being influence-free, which is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about how you transparently weave those influences together with your own story, your own perspective.
Which loops back perfectly to finding your voice.
Exactly. Building on that idea, the sources suggest finding your voice is maybe less about invention and more about discovery.
Ooh, I like that. It's not something you just magically invent one day.
No, it's something you kind of uncover or build over time through the actual doing of the work.
So where does it come from, according to these sources?
It comes from things like the stories only you can tell, your unique experiences.
Okay.
Also, the way your mind makes connections, between maybe unrelated things.
Unique perspective again.
Yeah. And the questions you keep asking about the world, about life, those recurring themes in your own thinking.
And the key thing is this voice. It doesn't have to be some huge, loud, dramatic thing, does it?
No, not at all. The sources say it doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be true.
True to you. True to those stories and connections and questions.
Right. And if you're worried, like, oh, does this sound too much like someone else? They offer some good self-check questions.
Like what?
Like asking yourself, am I expressing what I genuinely believe here? Am I making this mostly because I love the process itself? And am I honoring my influences openly? Or am I trying to hide them?
Those are really useful because that honesty, that transparency, that seems to be where a genuine voice really comes from.
And when you're feeling stuck or unsure, they say, go back to your lived experience.
Yeah, the things you've survived, loved, feared, lost, fought for. That's your raw material, the stuff only you can really speak to authentically.
There's a really powerful line about this. No one else has your scars. No one else has your memories.
Wow.
And no one else can leave the exact same fingerprint. That combination of your history and how you see it, that's the bedrock.
That's incredibly potent. It shifts the focus entirely.
It really does. And that leads into another fascinating idea they touch on, the sacredness of making.
Sacredness?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, just the act itself. Taking something invisible, an idea, a feeling, a memory, and giving it some kind of form, making it tangible.
Ah, okay. So the act of creation has inherent meaning.
Yes. Even if nobody else ever sees it, the process matters.
And it leaves a mark not just on the world if it's shared, but on you, the maker.
Exactly. The sources put it beautifully. Your work says, you are here, and this is what it felt like. It's a testament to your existence, your perspective.
And then there's that ripple effect they mention when other people do encounter your work.
Right. They don't just see the thing you made. They see permission.
Permission. How?
They might look at it and think, maybe I could see something like that too. Your act of creating gives them unspoken permission to try themselves.
So by witnessing yourself through creation, you kind of become a mirror for others, offering that same possibility.
Yeah, it's a lovely thought. But then there's the flip side. The sources also warn about when this whole quest for originality becomes a trap.
How does it become a trap?
Well, that feeling that stops you cold. Someone's already done something like this, or this isn't innovative enough, I can't share it. That kind of thinking.
Right, the paralysis of comparison. It turns creativity into this high-stakes competition.
Exactly. But there's another great quote to counter that. Originality isn't a weapon, it's a window.
A window.
Let people see you. That's what makes it new. The newness comes from your unique perspective shining through, not necessarily a completely novel form.
So trying too hard to be radically different can actually backfire. It can lead to being inauthentic.
That seems to be the point. The goal isn't necessarily to stand out at all costs. It's more about learning to stand true.
Stand true to yourself, to your voice, to that soft compass.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's try to wrap this up. If we distill the core message from all this material.
It seems to be that originality, the kind that matters, isn't really about being the absolute first. It's not about constant, frantic reinvention.
No, it's more about faithfulness. Being faithful to yourself, to your own experience. It's about reflection, listening to that internal compass.
Honesty. Honesty in your process, in your expression.
And remembering that your creations don't have to be these flawless masterpieces right out of the gate.
Not at all. They just need to be yours. Made with, care and curiosity from your unique vantage point.
Use copying to learn.
Yeah.
Consciously remix your influences. And, embrace the cringe when you look back at old stuff. It just means you're growing.
And maybe think about leaving your mark not just for applause, but as a simple record. A reminder that you were here.
Yeah, you create because it's how you speak your truth, how you figure things out, how you connect, just because you are here with your fingerprint.
And maybe the world actually needs that specific perspective that only you have seen through your window.
Definitely.
So here's something to maybe mull over based on everything we've discussed from these sources.
Okay.
Thinking about your own unique stories, your experiences, maybe even your scars and memories. If it's true that no one else has your exact fingerprint, has lived life exactly like you, then what stories are only you really equipped to tell? And just maybe, how might creating and sharing those stories, however imperfectly, offer not just your unique view to the world, but also that sense of permission to someone else who's watching, wondering if they can step into their own truth too?